I'm Bill Hand. How you doing? I'm with the New Bern Sun Journal, as you may know, especially if you're on the Sun Journal page. And we're going to share a little bit of New Bern history here. This is something we've decided to try starting out every Monday. Sit down and have a little chat. So if you wish, take some coffee, maybe grab a cookie, and we're going to talk history. It's February 28th, and February was, as you know, Black History Month, and so it makes a little sense to go ahead and wrap up the month with a final story about the Black community, or the African American community. Jonkonnu. Jonkonnu is a special festival, takes place around Christmas, but we're talking about it in February, and it is unique to North Carolina. No, you've probably seen it at some point because Tryon Palace has its own Jonkonnu program, which was started back in 2000 by musician and historian Simon Spalding, who decided it was about time to start really bringing additional Black history to the palace. So here's a little bit about it. I'm going to be reading some of this, so when you see my little eyes wandering off that way, well, that's why I'm cheating. It was a musical celebration held near Christmas on and around plantations and towns during the 1800s up to about 1898 or thereabouts. Interestingly, its earliest roots were actually in West Africa, from whence it traveled to slave traditions in the West Indies, particularly to Jamaica. Now, a lot of North Carolina's slaves came from the Bahamas or from the West Indies. And so it only made sense if they brought their traditions into North Carolina with them. All up and down the coast, we have evidence of this having taken place here. Now, Jonkonnu was similar in a way to the old Twelfth Night traditions. You've seen the Shakespeare play, right? But in Twelfth Night, they would take the commoners of the town, or pick out the town fools, as it were, and make him king for the day. And it gave the lower classes a chance to celebrate and get at least a little taste of what the freedom could be like. And that's what Jonkonnu was. The percussion was king as colorfully dressed ladies and men pranced about, and the leader, dressed in the finest suit he could find, sang spirituals and other songs. A dancing rag man dressed in animal hides and rags was the focal point of the show. After the dance, the leader would then shake the white man's hand and request monetary donations, which, in the spirit of the season, the master generally surrendered. Simon Spalding gave an interview to the National Geographic one time, and he said that might not seem significant in the 21st century, this whole dance, but it was very significant within slave-owning society. I think it functioned as a sort of safety valve to let enslaved people of the 19th century let off a little steam. Now, the first mention of Jonkonnu in North Carolina was written in 1829 by Edward Warren. He was the bones of a doctor, as it were, who attended the residence of Somerset Plantation in Washington County. According to Spalding, the celebration is also mentioned just north of a Virginia line. It's the only reference we find from Virginia. And it is also mentioned in sources in Wilmington, and also in memories and memoirs written about Raleigh. The online free dictionary gives this following description of the Carolina version. During slavery times, American blacks in North Carolina also carried out the Jonkonnu ritual at Christmas time. They called the custom Jonkonnu and spoke of going Jonkonnuing or Jonkoonnering on Christmas morning. Like their Caribbean counterparts, most participants in American Jonkonnu celebrations were men. They prepared homemade costumes embellished with strips of colorful cloth and also wore masks, some of which sported horns. Thus garbed and armed with simple musical instruments such as drums, triangles, violins, and Jews' harps, they made their way across the town. The masqueraders stopped at the houses of the well-to-do and sang and danced for the occupants and asked for money in return. They also entertained the people they met on their way. Some reports depict plantation slaves celebrating Jonkonnu on the grounds of the estate. The plantation owners enjoyed the music, the dancing, the masquerading, and often rewarded the participants with small gifts such as scarves or coins. Some slave owners convinced themselves that the happiness the slaves enjoyed during this yearly festival justified the institution of slavery. Now, if you watch Jonkonnu today, you'll find that it's a lot of entertainment, a lot of joy and happiness, and indeed that was always there. I mean, the women are prancing down the street under some brightly colored parasols, and drums are banging, the singer is doing his sprightly songs. It was no doubt a happy event in antebellum days as well. Their white masters would not have let them do it if it had hinted of being an expression of their oppression, but it almost certainly had its between-the-lines elements as well, secretly satirizing their masters and possibly even each other. Snickerdoodle. After all, oppressed people have always found a way to slam their masters through code words and through performances. You see it in prison camps. Rome, in the early Christian writings, often referred to Rome as Babylon. American slaves sang a song above a drinking gourd. It sounded innocent enough to their masters, but it was actually a code word saying, follow the North Star if you want to find your way to freedom. Even in modern times. Take The Wizard of Oz. You've seen the movie? A lot of fun for the kids, but if you see the play, it is full of satire that the movie doesn't even touch. Now, the Jamaican version of Jonkonnu, which is still celebrated there every year today, has definite suggestions of satire and commentary. Some of it aimed at the mulattoes who were favored by whites as mistresses, while the Palace's version's only non-chorus roles are the ragman and the lead singer. The Jamaican form has several specific dancers. There is Pitchy Pitch, Cowhead, whose steps resemble cows, the devil, and the belly woman. Now, the belly woman was always mulatto, and she did sensual steps involving movements of her belly and hips. It suggested her sexual relationships that she had with her master. Historians believe this is not so much an act of titillation as it was a negative satire on her role and character, as was known among the slave community. Is Jonkonnu ever mentioned historically in New Bern? No, we haven't found any sources yet, but slave activities, if they weren't runaways or if they weren't rebellions, were rarely mentioned in the press, so you wouldn't really expect to find anything there. The likelihood that it happened here is very high. Simon Spalding said if you triangulate where we documented Cresswell, Wilmington, and Raleigh, we're right in the middle of that. In other words, it's unlikely that a slave tradition that happened all around us didn't happen here as well. I'm Bill Hand, and we'll talk at you again next Monday with New Bern History. Have a good week. Enjoy some brew.